From Central Indiana's #1 news source, this is Fox 59 Tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Fox 59 Tonight. Right here on Fox 59 Tonight. We talk about everything from the White House to your house, and today's topic does include everything that impacts that's happening at the White House and will impact your house now that the big, beautiful bill has now passed out of the Senate, still has to make its way back to the House of Representatives in Washington. Um, President Trump wants this to be signed before the 4th of July. No sign, no real confidence that that is going to happen. But nevertheless, whatever version of this bill does get passed, what you are not hearing is how this will help people, unless you are wealthy. But for the average everyday person, there really is no debate that this is going to cause cuts to things like Medicaid, Medicare, which will hurt hospitals in rural Indiana, but also in urban areas of Indiana too. There's lots of other things in these bills that has a lot of people concerned, um, and it will have an impact on Indiana because, as we've talked about, uh, the state of Indiana this year is in a budget shortfall. What this bill does is it takes away money that the federal government was paying for Medicaid and then says your state will now foot that bill. Well, as we talked about at the end of session, the state doesn't have a big surplus of money that they're sitting on because we're short on money due to the tariffs. So now the states will have to pick up the bill, and if they don't, well, then things will be cut. People will lose uh, uh, coverage. Hospitals will close. Nursing homes will close because the funding just won't be there. So to find out more what the impact is on Indiana, uh, they're putting this in the lap of people who are your state representatives, your state lawmakers are now basically being tasked with figuring this out. One of them is in our studio, Representative Ed DeLaney. Sir, thank you for coming to the show. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Cameron. Good to be here.
Did I explain that situation right and where we are now?
Well, you got it right. I call this the big budget busting bill.
Mm-hmm.
It busts the federal budget, of course, with the three trillion plus additional borrowing, but it busts our budget too. That's what I'm focused on as a state legislator. And what it does is it's taking money specifically away from Medicaid. Let's be precise.
Mm-hmm.
The proposal would cut some 200,000 or more Hoosiers from Medicaid, and in addition would limit our ability to fund our contribution. People don't understand, but we pay part of Medicaid out of the state budget, and we have methods to get that money. The federal government is going to cramp down on those methods, so we'll have less resources. So we're going to have to go to our so-called general fund, our regular kitty, and dig in, and then we're going to have to decide whether we want to do that. I don't think the majority, the supermajority, is interested in funding Medicaid any more than it has been. So we're being forced by Washington to do something that we may well not do. So we'll lose revenue, so we'll have to cut. We'll lose members, meaning people who get care. Our hospitals will be affected. We've already undercut our health system. We cut tens of millions away from Eskenazi Health. This will affect them because they have a lot of Medicaid patients. We also cut our statewide program for public health outreach from 150 million to about 40 million. So we're on the downward slope here as far as taking care of health care. The most confusing new part is they somehow want the state to pay for food stamps. I can't get into the details yet because it's so complex, but the effect will be that it is said that a couple 100,000 Hoosiers who currently get food stamps will no longer get them, so it affects their budget. So the most interesting thing from a personal perspective is it looks like if you're at the lower end of the economy, you're in the bottom 20%, you'll save $150 on your taxes and lose a multiple of that on Medicaid and food stamps and other social programs. So it's a loser for family budgets at the lower income level. It's a budget, and curiously, what's happening, I won't use the terminology, but stuff does run downhill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so right now, we at the State House are putting pressure on local government
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
to substitute for property taxes.
Correct.
So it's fallen down at two layers. It's hitting them from the White House and then the State House,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hitting the people who earn less. I think it's very unfortunate, but that seems to be what's going to happen.
Pull that microphone a little bit closer to
Sure.
you. We just not too long ago wrapped up the legislative session,
Right.
and you alluded to some of the things that happened during that session, which was um, cuts to Medicaid at the state level already, and then Senate Bill 1, which takes money away from all of the municipalities and governments and cities. And we already created a gap.
Yes.
Indiana chose to, so we have our own Indiana problem.
We're running close to the edge financially. We've chosen to do that. I think that's a mistake.
Now you have the federal government saying, pick up a little more of this tab.
Right. Or let your people suffer.
Correct.
So that seems to be the two choices we have. I think some of the suffering is going to happen, period. But how big is up to us. And part of this is just there's anger in Washington about what's called Medicaid expansion, which is that have more people on Medicaid under the Obamacare law. Governor Pence is the one who put the program in. It's been incredibly successful. It's kept a lot of our rural hospitals open, and more importantly, it's kept a lot of people getting health care who weren't getting it in an organized fashion. So we were just beginning to figure out how to get people to have access and to take access, and now all of a sudden the money issue is risen to the fore, and we're going to have to decide what to do.
Are you guys already hearing, or had you been hearing, from hospitals and nursing homes to say, if this does happen, it's not a matter of um, if, but it's a matter of what day do we start winding down things?
Yeah, I think the hospitals are reluctant to, stick their hand up and say, "I'm going to close on day one," but there are enough rural hospitals, in particular, with limited resources, that there's a list of about a dozen that are in danger of closing. And what's also happening is what I call partial closing. So access to obstetric care, which is critical, is shrinking. There are more and more counties where there are no obstetricians or no delivery rooms for babies. So, it's happening. It's the death of 1,000 nicks, or is it a total close down? So we'll see what it's going to be. But there's no upside for rural hospitals or even what used to be called county hospitals, poverty-oriented hospitals like Eskenazi has been. I mean, to me, it's been a source of great pride that one of the finest hospitals in the state is effectively a county hospital. But we took 50 million in one case and some other tens of millions in another case away from that hospital. But when we take their patients away, that's another thing. It hurts the patients, but it also cuts the revenue. So yeah, it's a tough moment. I don't know how we're going to deal with this, and people forget there's some quirky things in the law. We tend to follow the federal deductions.
Mm-hmm.
So are we going to stop taxing tips as a state? Are we going to stop taxing overtime wages as a state? There will be pressure to do that
Because this is what it says in the big
in the federal bill. Now we're not bound to make every tax break they do, but
we tend to follow.
we very heavily tend to follow it for a lot of reasons, but we do. And so we may find ourselves with less revenue. At the same time, we have more burdens. So I think it's a budget buster for us. Now, let's be fair to ourselves. We chose to reduce taxes in ways that we, in my view, should not have. So we chose to run as close to the edge as we could. We're already, as I understand it, slipping below our goal for having a surplus of about 10, 12%. We're having trouble keeping that. So we don't have a lot of spare cash sitting around. And I think this was a willful act on the part of the last governor and the present governor, and we're going to see whether the public is happy having their services cut at the same time that Washington's telling us what to do.
This is an easy story to cover in the fact that it doesn't matter what branch of government you're in, if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, this bill is about cuts. And
Fundamentally, that's right.
and so you have even quotes like Senator Josh Hawley. I had a quote up that he said, "quote Rural hospitals are going to be in bad shape." So usually we have to decipher how's this going to impact everybody. Is it going to be as bad as he
Right.
said? But this one, it's like, no, it's going to be bad.
It's pretty clear who's going to affect. One of the things that struck me, and Hawley is a very interesting case because he's so conservative. I generally don't agree with him, but he's standing up for his people, and that's one of the things that bothers me the most in this case. Uh, the senator from Alaska negotiated special deals on rural hospitals, special deals on fishermen. Our Republican congressional delegation, where'd they go? Go to sleep? They had nothing they wanted to do, nothing in Indiana needed to be protected. We can just roll over to whatever the president asks them to do. I'm embarrassed for them. Not one of them had the courage to stand up and say, this is going too far for my people. And we got Congress members who represent totally rural districts. So they can explain for themselves. I don't understand it. And I don't understand why Murkowski could get money and our senators can't. Okay? Hello?
There's a list. We have this list on FOX59.com. There's a list of 12 Indiana hospitals that could be impacted.
Right.
And these are all in essentially rural areas. So you've got the Davies Community Hospital in Washington. None of these are big cities.
Right.
Memorial Hospital in Logansport, Community Hospital in Brennan, Ascension in Winchester, North Vernon, Brazil, and Salem, IU Health in Portland, Franciscan Health in Rensselaer, Sullivan County Community Hospital, Adams Memorial Hospital in Decatur, and Harrison County Hospital in Corydon. None of those are in your Fort Waynes, your South Bends, your
Right.
Indianapolis, and those are places that a Fort Wayne and Indianapolis or South Bend are not just down the street.
Right. Yeah. We'll have problems here because we'll lose a large number of patients. If there's 200,000, 250,000 people go off the list, they won't be going to the hospitals or doctors or clinics here in Indianapolis to the extent that they have been, and that costs them revenue. So there'll be an impact here. The risk of an actual closure is obviously less here. Um, but when you think about it, if a hospital closed in Marion County, there's another one not all that far away. You're out in Davies County or some of these rural counties, you're talking 20, 30, 40 miles.
Correct.
If you're injured or if you're having a baby or whatever, this is not a good situation. So I think this is unfortunate. We know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And all they're trying to do is preserve the tax cuts from Trump's first term, which heavily favored the wealthiest. We have not been able to figure out what to do about taxing the wealthy in Washington. And here we don't have any graduated tax rates. We refuse to say that if you make $1 million, you ought to pay 4% state income tax instead of 3%. We refuse to do that. That's, in my view, a big mistake. The people who make the most money tend to benefit the most from government. They benefit from police protection, from roads, from airports, all that. But they don't pay more. And so we're shrunken. But now in Washington, they're doing the same thing. We're going to just huge tax breaks to the people at the upper end and nothing essentially for people at the lower end other than cuts, which offset any tiny tax saving. So it's a bad moment. And, it's interesting to me. There's almost no one praising this bill other than one guy. And he has terrorized members of Congress into saying, I got to do this. They don't need to think. No, we pay you to think. And if what the president wants you to do is somehow not helpful, tell him and tell us and let us know that you're complaining. If you represent Davies County or Randolph County or wherever it may be, you should be saying something.
What do you think of the work requirement that this establishes? And now here's another thing that's going to be burdened on the state to make sure that people are meeting these work requirements every 6 months. The state's now going to be responsible for checking to see that if people are getting Medicaid, that they, in the eyes of the federal government, deserve to be on.
Several of the states that have tried this, let's call them rigid and repeated work requirements to get Medicaid. Because remember, Medicaid is health insurance. It's not cash payments. It's not welfare. But anyway, the states that have tried this, several of them have backed up because the costs of chasing people and trying to find out whether they're employed and how they're employed and how many hours they're working are high. So the experience seems to be that it costs more to chase a few people than the benefits of kicking them off the system. Okay. So fiscally, it's not wise to go crazy with this. I understand having requirements. We should have some requirements. And we do have state requirements. I'm not totally opposed to them, but you have to be very careful how you spend your money and your resources. So I want the Medicaid officials busy trying to find efficiencies, trying to negotiate cost deals, trying to make sure that people are being treated well, rather than spending all their time making sure that everybody's got a job. Ultimately, the job requirement is a strange requirement because this is, as I said, this is health insurance. This is not cash payments. So why do we want to throw people off?
Well, they also, I've heard them use the term able bodied people. And I know of people who are able bodied, maybe mentally would not
Yeah,
be.
they're not ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not ready to work. There is that group. And there are also people, frankly, who are holding out for a better job. There's some people, I understand this, who say, I'm not taking just any lousy job that I would hate, pays too little, and then I'm going to quit as soon as I can. I'd rather spend another month or two looking for something else. That's perfectly understandable. So I think the state's getting a little heavy with some of these requirements. In principle, the idea is if you're able to work, you ought to work. That's a great principle. How do you disagree with that? The question is, how does it come down to the individual sitting in front of me? And how much time and money do I want to spend redetermining that person's ability?
What keeps coming back to mind, I keep hearing them say, we're going to have the state do it. We're going to have the state do it. And then I go back and I hear about session and the state saying, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. We're going to do less and less and less. And then if there's a requirement, well, we'll have your local governments do it. And the local governments say, well, hey, you just took some of my funding. So I had to get rid of all these people that would have done this work. It seems like Indiana preemptively dug a nice hole for what is coming.
Yeah, I think we're ill prepared, and historically, I've been fiscally rational. I guess you could say fiscally conservative, partly because of fear of broad economic movements like the Great Recession, where the housing market goes crazy or whatever. But this is the first time I recall where the government has decided to impose chaos and threaten with tariffs and threaten with cuts. I don't understand it. This country is fundamentally doing well. If we need to adjust some things, let's adjust them. But what we're really doing is operating off an enemies list. We don't like Obamacare, and this is the best way to attack it. So let's go fool around with Medicaid expansion because we don't like Obamacare. Let's do that. We don't like food stamps in principle. So what if the farmers make money off it? So what if the grocery stores make money off it? So what if people build their budget around it? We just don't like it. We need not to legislate based on what we don't like. We need to legislate on what people have expectations for and what works. And I think we've lost sight of that.
Well, and you bring up a good point because we don't often, with these bills, people all. I saw someone celebrating Facebook yesterday. Somebody that I know, somebody who does not make a lot of money, somebody who probably qualifies or is one step. They have insurance from their job, but one step from being on Medicaid, and they were celebrating because they said, "Well, I'm happy to see these benefits being taken away from people. It'll be nice to see how these benefits are going to be used elsewhere." And like, there's no plan to use them elsewhere.
There is no elsewhere, right? Yeah, they can't transfer what was just taken away from. Yeah, look. It costs us money to have people delay getting treatment. That's another factor. Let's be very cynical about it. If someone is feeling ill, has no Medicaid, and is developing a cancer, if they delay and delay and delay, when they go to the hospital, they're going to be in a special ward. They're going to have special care. They're going to have surgeries. Illness costs us money, aside from the humane aspect. it makes people sick. It makes children not grow as well as they should. And then it costs us money later. I mean, we've got to be more mature about health insurance, and we're not being mature in this particular case.
Are you guys, session is over, but is there already talk of, okay, what are we going to have to come up with by the time the next session begins?
That is not something that the majority likes to talk about.
Mhm.
They like to pretend they've got things under control. And I think that is, to be fair, is disturbing them because too much is going on in Washington that upsets things. We don't like it when our budget forecast suddenly collapses by $1 billion. That's not what we're used to. So the problem is they don't like these topics. They don't like to talk about Medicaid. They don't like to talk about food stamps. On food stamps, by the way, if the feds apparently have some mechanism that's going to make us pay part of that, we haven't been doing that. So if we get an additional expenditure, so we're going to have to be adults about this. I don't know how serious we'll take this problem. We have a tendency to just sort of let it go. Now, let it go means that instead of 150,000 people losing Medicaid, we might have 250. Instead of 100,000 losing food stamps, we might have 200,000. I just don't know. But they've cut all of our ability to raise money. The only thing they know to do about taxes is to cut it, not to preserve it, let alone expand it to people who can better afford or to look at things that should be a source of revenue. So I'm very concerned about that. There are other issues almost not as important, but very important. Like where are we going on utility bills? These data centers and things are incredibly expensive and have enormous impacts. So I'm worried. I do not think the Indiana Republican Party is fiscally reliable. It just isn't. Because if all you say is every year I have to have a tax cut, then you don't invest. The healthcare is the best example. We said we're going to invest 150 million a year into largely the rural districts to get people access to care, to get them coming in, get them treated, get them vaccinated, et cetera. And all of a sudden we say, oh, well, we'll just take it back. We're not investing. We don't know how to invest. We have the same problem with the universities. We know how to criticize now. We know how to try to run the universities out of the State House, which is a silly idea. But we don't know how to invest. So I think that's the biggest problem. That's hard to ask the taxpayers to invest. It is hard to do that, but we do it for roads. We figured that out. Oh, there's anger on that, but we got to figure out how to invest in our kids and how to invest in our health care, and we haven't figured that out.
We got to take a commercial break, but I want to ask you when we come back, got time. To talk. I want to talk about the Indianapolis ILEA, but I also want to talk about roads because there's a new bill that passed that says Indiana can just go ahead and make any road they want to a toll road. And I'm curious of your thoughts on that. More with Representative.
I'll be here. Thank you.